Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Lazarus Season 1, Episode 8. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I'd actually completely forgotten the fact is that Chris got kidnapped at the end of last episode. A lot of insight we got this episode. First and foremost, the team who's there, Axel, Doug, Leland, and Elena. And it's mainly Doug pushing the whole getting Hirsch to confess like her connection. I mean, she ends up revealing that the Lazarus Project is like, not the Lazarus Project because it's a literal TV show called that. The Lazarus group here is a subgroup, like a special task force under the NSA. We just didn't know which initial organization that they technically worked for. So, but yeah, Hirsch was brought in because she did work with Skinner years ago on what is the Hapna project, but he disappeared, and then I think she left the team sometime afterwards, and then 3 years later is when it came out about Hapna being the ticking time bomb that it was. So she was brought onto the team because, having worked with Skinner for a long time, she knew him pretty well, and they figured she'd have insight into pointing in the right directions. If anyone could help find Skinner, it'd be her, because no one else has any other idea until the message popped up 3 years later about everything. So it's interesting getting that insight, but also we find out about Chris's background, who the people are that kidnapped her. They are Russian agents because Chris is she defected from Russia, which is really interesting. And I've kept bringing it up over and over again about a couple episodes back. I keep reiterating about Leland and her having a conversation when they went to Skinner's house, and he's like, "What did you do in the past?" She was like, "I was like a CIA or I think she said specifically a CIA agent or a spy or whatever." He's like, "Yeah, whatever." And I kept saying in multiple episodes, I'm like, I think there's probably truth to that. There was slight truth, not necessarily any U.S. agencies, but it turns out she was a Russian agent. And the reason why these people grabbed her up is because she's a traitor. They actually thought she died 3 years ago, and it turns out that she got surgery to change her face. Interesting timing, because I'm watching Kowloon Generic Romance, and there's a character that got full-blown plastic surgery to escape their past. I mean, it's not like it's out of the, of course there's people who would do that, but it's just interesting timing watching two shows that do the same, have a character like that. Both blondes, interestingly enough. But either way, I'm curious when Chris started using Hapna. I'd assume it was after she faked her death. I guess it was part of her new life, and I guess because she was she talked about being in the clubs, and it's right, she just wanted to live a normal life after everything. Because we don't know all the ins and outs of why she wanted to get away. I guess she just was tired of the agency, and it's that was your only way out. She didn't. She wanted to run away, but it was never going to be a possibility. And just there was an incident that happened where I think maybe a gas situation where everyone died, and they thought she faked her death. She ends up revealing later in the episode, no, I didn't fake my death. I actually did die. My heart stopped beating, but then it started beating afterwards. And so I was I was literally clinically dead. They had written it up, so I just took advantage of it and I bounced. So the main woman in charge of this is Igna, and it wasn't until the piano sequence when they showed two hands on top of each other. I was like, those look like female hands. I was like, are they? Definitely one of them was, but it was the other one on top. I was like, that looks like it's a female hand. I was like, were these two lovers? Turns out they were. In fact, their relationship was even more complicated because that was her handler. So I was like, ooh, kind of the espionage complication when you fall in love with a person that kind of handles. And Chris's reason for bailing on her own, even though she wanted to run, but it's there would be no escape for both of them. And she ran away on her own because you're my handler. If they found out I ran, they would have killed you because you would have been held responsible, because it would have been a thing of, oh, so how can we believe you didn't know she was going to do that? You're a handler. Whatever she does, you're responsible for, but who's to say you didn't co-sign it? So it was Chris's way to kind of make sure that she was okay too. But it's she once again took advantage of the situation. But either way, It's interesting because Igna, well, aside from like I guess her getting initially knocked out, Igna never hit her. It was I think well I saw the name in the credits. They may have said his name in the episode, but I think his name's Sergio. Like he's the one that really lays into Chris multiple times, which is like Jesus. But I mean, it's like, hey, like, there's like, you're a traitor, man or woman, we're gonna like kill you or beat the crap out of you. But the thing is, and I'm sure Chris already knew this in the back of her mind, and I think it's interesting she never bothered saying anything because I guess it's like, well, why give you the satisfaction of like trying to stop, like, either taking my death into your own hands? Because with her being so far away, the timer has clicked down on like the wristwatch, and it's like she will die in like 3 days, and she's already been going one, so they have 2 days to try and track down Chris and bring her back before the situation kills her. Because it's like, yeah, it's meant to be your Suicide Squad-esque thing of like to keep you in line, especially in Chris's case. I mean, it's a factor in probably the most flight risk people probably be Elena, Chris, and Axel are probably the biggest flight risk. Elena being a hacker, she'd probably find her way around things if she could. Chris is a Russian agent, so they don't want to take the chance you might defect back to Russia just to kind of save yourself. So, and Axel is the escape artist that he is. So you want to keep as much of a leash on them as possible. Initially Hirsch was kind of like, well, we can't really do anything right now, but also she was kind of like, yeah, Chris might, we can't take we can't ignore the possibility that Chris might have also defected. But the whole team was like, screw that, and still went anyway. It's interesting enough that it was Axel that kind of led the charge, and I wonder if there's something more there. I mean, once again, we're all kind of in this together. We've spent the past like half a month together, like going through everything we've gone through. So like, yeah, we've built some camaraderie and friendship. So it's like, yeah, we got each other's back. So like when one of us is in trouble, we go through, like, we've helped each other countless times. So, but when it was all said and done, even Hirsch kind of bit the bullet and decided to help too, because she's like, right, I do want Chris back as well. And I guess for her, it's just like she doesn't want to be responsible for just kind of like sitting back and doing nothing. So she gave them the support they need. I really love that whole sequence with like Elena's side of things, like her hacking, like they set her up in like a command center. Like in the area they're in, I think they're in like Norway. A section of Norway is where they're at. Um, but whatever the case may be, and she's like got like an audience the entire time she's doing her hacking thing and stuff like that. I was like, I love that. And just them being like, oh, like looking at the screens and Elena doing her thing, especially because she's bouncing between like doing two keyboards at once. I love the whole Leland hiding in like a like floating, like it's like a boat, but it's got like a sheet over it to look like a ice block. You have Axel going underneath the water, and Doug is meant to be in a boat. Like there's a large ship they're gonna ram into the oil rig to act as a distraction. Obviously, Chris is taunting Sergio to be like, "Yo, like you need to, rough me up a little bit. Like, oh, big tough guy, you want to beat up a woman that's tied up?" And he's like, "I'm not stupid enough to like untie you." But he was tossing her around the room. Um, I love that sequence where like obviously she got enough like free when his back was turned and like kicked him around, and when he tossed her and she bounced off the wall and like kicked him and then like hard like drop kicked his throat. I was like, oh, I just loved how that was like animated. I was like, that's sick, especially like the impact from when he threw her and she smashed against the wall. I was like, oh, that's so sick, dude. Axel manages to get on board. Doug is doing his thing. I find it really interesting that like Axel, I mean, at least from the sequence we were seeing, he didn't fully use the guns. There was like one or two sections in it that whole oil rig situation. Sorry, that he was using the gun. Like at one point, there was a guy in front of him. He didn't shoot the guy. He just like hit him with the butt of the gun, like the rifle or whatever. And then you had Doug over there, like on the boat, just like sniping people. But yeah, like Axel used it like once or twice. He shot people, but for the most part, he was just like disarming people and knocking them out. Because I guess it's like, I don't know if it's a thing if he's just not comfortable with guns, because he's used them before in past episodes. But I think it's just like, I don't know, just not his cup of tea. It's like, it's just easier to just like knock you out. I use it as like a blunt weapon more often than I'm not as its intended purpose as a gun. I haven't loved Axel's duking it out with that like I said, I keep calling him Sergio because I think that's his name, but it might be some other character. Either way, with the big dude. You also got to give it up to Elena for using the crane or whatever it is on top of like the oil rig and like slamming it against stuff, like because she was able to hack into the system because Axel got access and turned on like some equipment in the oil rig, so she was able to kind of hack in from that front. But even though she managed to kind of escape on her own, the moment she ran into Axel, she was like, "You should leave me behind because," and he was like, "It doesn't matter what you did in the past. I'm here to save you for who you are now." And I'm curious what it is that she did in her past, and why will we ever we'll probably never know. But it's like that's probably also why she wanted to leave the agency, where it's like you had to do certain things for your country that you're not proud of, that it just kind of sticks with you and haunts you, and you're just like, I'm not worth saving. So that's probably why she was just kind of like, whatever punishment comes my way, I've been kind of basically living on borrowed time essentially in a lot of ways. And maybe that's why the Hapna thing is just this interesting irony too, because it was like, well, if it's not the Hapna that's going to kill me, maybe eventually like life will catch up with me for all that I've done. But we did have the Igna and Chris confrontation, and once again the reveal that they were lovers. And for Chris, it's like, whatever you're gonna do to me, go ahead and do it, because she's been perfectly fine waiting for death. And for her, it's like, the moment I saw you, I froze. I had a different face and I was hiding, but I still froze, because she's like, even with that all said and done, my heart still, beat for you type of situation. And she's always been willing, like, I knew one day maybe you might be the one that ended up killing me, and I've always kind of accepted that and been ready for that. It is sad though, because she hesitated to pull the trigger on Chris, because it's like, right, even all these years later, all that hate, like, it doesn't overshadow like that love that was there. And Sergio, whatever, like, shot at Chris. I think he was aiming for Chris, but Igna got in the way. But he was like, right, you're a traitor too, because your reluctancy to kill her. And so it's such a shame. Like, after all this time, for them to be reunited under these complicated circumstances, and then to finally have her die in your arms is heartbreaking, you know? And Igna's kind of happy. It's like, even if it was just this one last time, I was glad that I was able to see you before, in this life under these circumstances. So luckily they got off the oil rig before it exploded. But it's just that sad, like, last shot of the episode where Chris is holding out her hand and like doing her fingers with like she's playing, like the earlier sequences we kept seeing with the piano keys. She was playing them because I guess it's something they like connected and bonded over, maybe, which is just very heartbreaking that this storyline ended this way. Would there have been any other way for it to end? But I mean, the world is what it is, so there's probably not going to be no like happily ever after in a lot of ways, but still. But like I said, at the very least, they got Chris back, and the situation has been resolved. Anyone that knew that she was still alive, because they didn't let the head honchos know that she was still alive, because they were going to deal with this themselves. So like, they never reported back to Russia about it. So that the fact is Chris is alive dies with them, because the only person who could have recognized Chris is Igna, because she's like, right, you might have a different face, but you can't change those eyes. So Igna's the only one that would have been able to recognize her. So whether they'll like ask questions, like the team will asking questions going forward, probably not, because they're just like, we all have our situation, we all have our past. Well, I mean, everyone's kind of dealing with their past in some shape or form so far. So none of them are the type to really prod, because it's like, right, we know you as Chris, and that's all that really matters. But yeah, I'm really interested to see where the next episode takes us. Obviously, I'm getting to this really late. The new episode came out, I think it was, well, technically yesterday night, technically this morning at the time we were recording this. So I'm going to jump on that at some point in time. But I'm excited to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.